Hey there. What's got us so down in the dumps, young man?
My plants are boring.
Plants aren't boring, son. They provide the oxygen we need to live.
Yeah, but they don't do anything. They're not like a dog or like a mallard or a mongoose. They just sit here and they don't do nothing.
Well, I think that's just because you aren't using the proper ingredient. What you need is a little bit of...
What?
Imagination! Don't tell me you've never used imagination before. Do you want to bring some life to your plants? Well, I've got a little secret for you. Come closer. 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 Are you listening? You don't need a plant at all! To get us started, we're going to first need one blue sock, one pair of green socks, one pair of red buttons, a needle, your choice of matching thread, some stuffing made from cotton or polyfiber fill, a pair of scissors, and the will to succeed. Let's not waste time, we've got a friend to create. Let's start with our blue sock. We'll only need half.
I want to use a black sock.
Well, it's your project. You can use whatever color sock you think is appropriate for your potted pal. Next, we'll cut the shape of a W into the top of our piece. This doesn't have to be exact, but do make sure you start in the corners and be as symmetrical as you can manage. Then, it's time to stuff. Take your stuffing and lightly pack it into your piece, doing your best to keep it round and even. When you're stuffed to the brim, it will be time to sew, but before we sew, we'll have to thread a needle. Let's watch how it's done. With your two ends of thread held firmly in your fingers, wrap them up 3 times around the needle. Then simply pinch and pull down, and you've got yourself a knot.
Hey, I did it, Mr. Man. This is easy. But wait a minute. Isn't sewing for girls?
Tell that to my friend who stitched me up during the war. I'll never forget cresting over the top of that hill, the enemy raining mortar on top of us. Private Coleweather had just lost his leg, but there he was, needle in hand, patching me up from a 51mm round that had torn through my right shoulder. I picked up my M16 with my left hand and emptied the cartridge into our encroaching foes while Coleweather put me back together. I'd have done the same if I could have found the rest of him. If Coleweather were here today, he'd tell you to stitch that doll for America, son. Much like my shoulder, we now have to close up our hole. But we can't just run our thread around silly-nilly. Observe this handy stitch. Starting on one side of the fabric, we run under to the other side and up, then under to the other side, and up again. This is called the ladder stitch. Ladder stitching is great for closing up a seam from the outside, as the tension folds both edges towards one another and down into the depths, nary to be seen again. Most important to remember is to tie off your stitch when you're finished, by looping and knotting your thread once or even twice over. Let's see how you did. Great! That's the round beginning of a cold-hardy companion if I ever saw one. Let's continue on by making the face. Start by knotting, or anchoring, your thread around the eye. Now you'll have to plunge your needle south, poking through to where your buddy's mouth would be. A tiny stitch, also known as a tack, will pinch the fabric together as you pull the thread between the mouth and the eyes. This takes a bit of patience, so don't be afraid to take your time. Looking good. Now let's move on to the legs. Cut about ½ an inch deep into our sock, and then cut the rest in a curve right before the heel. Then cut the larger piece straight up the middle and trim the top to make it round. We'll then fold these pieces inside out. Now cut up the middle of our small piece as well, and up the middle one more time. Let's take a look at another stitch. Dipping your needle in one side and out the other is the key to this stitch, called the running stitch. The running stitch is appropriate for joining two sides or two pieces of fabric on the inside. That's why we've turned these inside out, so that when we flip them, the edges will be neatly concealed. Do this to all 4 pieces, but only sew the little pieces down the long edge. Uh-oh, we need to turn these pieces right side out, but they're completely closed. Not to worry, simply take your scissors and snip tiny holes in the top side of the sock. This will give you all the hole you need to flip. If you have the butt of a pencil or a chopstick, getting the pieces back in shape is easy. Thanks, China. Now we can stuff each of our pieces full. And now let's use the ladder stitch to attach the ankles to our feet.
I am having a good time.
Good to hear. We're already halfway to Friendtown, so let's keep moving. Take aim of where your legs will sit under your body and sew them on. It's really shaping up, so let's get our green sock. This lovely green color will give us some fancy leaves. Just cut 5 long leaf-shaped pieces that are about the length of our doll's body, but they can be of varying size. Once you have 5 pieces, then you're ready to flip and stitch. Be sure to leave a hole at the bottom of each leaf. You won't want to cut into these pieces when you're done, as there's nowhere to conceal your hole, and an open hole is, more often than not, a shoo-in for disaster. Turn your pieces right side out again, and stuff them till they're firm, even at the tip. Then simply close them up, and use the running stitch to create an indentation down the center of each leaf. It's a simple and effective way to create depth. But while it may be easy, you should take your time in lining up your stitches so that your line is straight and even. Now we're ready to stitch each leaf onto the head, starting with the back 2 leaves, then the center 2 leaves, and finally, the front leaf. You can even bend your leaves slightly for some added detail. Let's pick out a pair of lovely red buttons. They can be whatever style you prefer, but remember, the eyes are windows to the soul. You can use some pins to arrange the eyes how you like before sewing them in. Sewing on a pair of buttons is easy, so long as you keep in mind to stitch through the fabric and then loop the button. Stitch the fabric and loop the button. Follow these 2 steps until you've sufficiently affixed your buttons to the face. And what do you know? We've got ourselves a pleasant playfellow. Show us your Oddish, young man. Amazing job! Looks like you've got a new hobby and a friend. Say, let's give our chlorophyll confidant a little sun.
Don't